Hello, I'm going to go through some problems today on completing the square. I'm going to do 3 problems. A very simple one, a very hard one, not hard, harder, and another simple one. So let's start with this one, the very simple one. X squared minus 6x minus 7 equals 0. Some of you might be able to tell that if you had your choice of methods to use on this, you would factor it because this would be easily factorable. But we are practicing the completing the square method because sometimes it's the best method to use when you can't factor. So the first thing we do when we're using the completing square method is we make sure that a is equal to 1. And it is. There's an invisible 1 here as the a. If it's not equal to 1, we have to divide every term by whatever a is, whatever number that is. But we can skip that because a is 1. The next thing we do is we write it what I call the setup. And the setup is getting the squared term and the linear x term, x to the first, on one side of the equation with a plus blank, and moving the number or the constant to the other side of the equation with a plus blank. So because whatever I'm going to have to add to the left side to complete the square has to be added to the right side to keep the equation balanced. So I need to get this -7. I need to add 7 to both sides to get that on the other side. And in doing so, I'm going to add a space here because I'm going to trick this whole left side into being a perfect square trinomial. So I'm going to plus 7 plus 7. So on the right side, I have 7, and whatever I add to the left side in the blank has to be added to the right side. So I do this simply because I can't just willy-nilly add something to one side of an equation. It'll make the equation unbalanced, untrue. So if this is true, then this is true. And as long as I add the same thing to both sides of the equation, it will stay true. So then I take half of the b term, find half of b. So that would be -6. Okay, so up here, b over 2 is -6 divided by 2, which is -3. And I'm going to write that right under here, -3. And then I'm going to create a factor, x minus 3 quantity squared. And because I'm going to make something that is equivalent to this, if I was to FOIL out x minus 3 times itself, which is what this means, I would get x squared plus 3x or minus 3x for a minus 6x, and then I would get a plus 9. So that's what's going to go in here is the positive 9. I take half of b and the -3, and I square it to get a positive 9. And if I add it on the left, I have to add the same thing on the right. And the idea is that this right here means the same thing as this, right? This is just the factored form of that. So I tricked it. I just, using those two terms, said, what would I have to add here to make it factor to this, to make this whole thing factor to that? So I simplify the right side next. 9 plus 7 is 16. Okay, now we can use the square root method. I have squared term or expression equals number. So I take the positive and negative square root of both sides. So on the left side, the square root of anything squared is that thing, is x minus 3, equals on the right side, positive or negative square root of 16. So this, of course, is going to be a positive or -4. And I want to get the x alone, so I'm going to add 3 to both sides in front of that plus minus. So I'm going to have on the left x equals 3 plus or minus, and in simplifying the square root of 16, that is 4. And that represents 2 solutions. I think of it as the plus path, 3 plus 4, and the minus path, 3 minus 4. This stacking is just an efficient way of not having to write it all out twice. So 3 plus 4 is 7, 3 minus 4 is -1. So my 2 solutions to this equation are positive 7 and -1. Okay, And if I put in a 7 for x, 7 squared is 49. 49 minus 6 times 7 is 42. 49 minus 42 is 7 minus 7 is 0. That works. If I put in a -1, this becomes -1 squared, which is 1. -6 times -1 is a +6. So 1 plus 6 is 7, minus 7 is 0. They both work. Okay, so the idea is write it the setup, putting the blank spaces where you can add a number, a value to complete the square on both sides. Take half of the b term, write that here in a factor, square this number, put it here, add it to the other side, simplify the right side to one value, your left side in squared form, and then take the positive and negative square root of both sides and solve for x by isolating the x. Okay, next one is on the next video.